Good morning, everyone. A warm welcome to everyone joining us in person and virtually. My name is Alexandra Pasternak-Jackson. I'm the CEO of Amcham Finland, and we are here today, as we are every year, to talk about foreign direct investment, FDI. Its importance and how we can secure Finland's future, and how we can navigate this increasingly competitive environment. The news in the last few days has really reflected the urgency of this conversation. A Kauppalehti article noted that the green investment wave in Finland had slowed significantly in 2024, with new projects dropping from 55.5 billion euros to 6.1 billion euros. Similar worries of Finland's journey to a green future slowing down were mentioned in a Helsingin Sanomat editorial recently. At Amcham, we share the vision of Finland being a green energy superpower and attracting investments in areas such as green steel, hydrogen, and wind power. In Finland, we have a resilient electricity grid, available land, raw material, and that's just one investment area. Between healthcare, digital, emerging technologies, and defense, there are many, many more. So today, even though the economic situation at times may look bleak, we are rationally optimistic. We have the right ingredients in this country to be prosperous, to grow our economy, and contribute to the world in a positive way. Today, we've got approximately 100 public, private, and third sector decision makers in this room, and a record number of people tuning in from their home offices, from their offices, or from their home. So, again, a warm welcome to all of our partners and members. And for our first timers, let's do this. Amcham Finland is the voice of international business in Finland and the home of transatlantic success. We are an independent, non-profit corporate membership organization, 100% funded by our members. And we look after the long-term interests of international companies in Finland. In our membership, we have companies headquartered in 14 different countries and industries that run the gamut from forestry to defense, life science to tech, and more. All in all, 20 different industries. And we're here today thanks to our foreign investors, our members. So let me give you some stats that matter. And I really hope that you share these stats when you're at mingles, when you're at receptions, over a cup of coffee, even over a glass of wine. These stats are even better at 6 p.m. 27% of all R&D in Finland is by foreign investors. That's about 1.2 billion euros. 39% of all exports are generated by foreign investors. And that's an increase of 9% since 2020, as well as 308,800 jobs. In 2 years, foreign investors added 30,000 jobs to the Finnish economy. That's amazing. Okay, now is when the audience reacts. That's amazing. Woo, yeah. And a shout out and a thank you to Invest in Finland for getting us those figures. Now, these companies behind me, they're not just foreign investors. They're actually Finnish companies of global origin. They are Oys. They are international investors who've made a home here in Finland, who are committed to Finland. That's why we're so proud to work on their behalf. These international companies make Finland's economy more resilient. And when an international company invests in Finland, its home country now has a stake in our success, which is good for the economy and our international relations. Our members create high-quality jobs in Finland, improve our competitiveness, fuel R&D and innovation, and develop our workforce and talent pipelines. Investment decisions can take 5 to 7 years, sometimes longer, which is a driving reason behind the strong need and the work we do pushing for an FDI vision. Our visionary members are those future-oriented members that are committed to an ongoing dialogue and working with the public sector and the government to ensure that we're globally competitive in attracting investment, talent, and driving innovation. Visionary members work on topics such as digitalization, talent, defense, security, and FDI. But today, we're here thanks to our FDI Forum partners. These exceptional companies and organizations believe that we are more than the sum of our parts, and that we can achieve more together than we can alone. So a warm thank you to Borenius, to Bristol Myers Squibb, to Business Tampere, Enter Espoo, and Suomen Ekonomit. Thanks, guys. Yeah. Foreign direct investment brings in knowledge, exchange, capital, jobs, innovation, talent, tax revenue, and more. Can you tell I love this stuff? FDI fuels growth, creates jobs, and drives innovations. And we will continue to be champions for our international members and for Finland. But do you know something else that Amcham is champions of? It's okay, you can shout it out. Networking. Those of you who have been with us before are probably itching, just waiting for these 30 seconds I'm about to give you, where you pull out your business cards or open your phone to your LinkedIn QR codes. I can see several people reaching into their pockets, and I love it. I am going to give you those 30 seconds this morning to make a new friend, to connect with someone you already know. But over lunch, you guys can tell each other what you do for a living and who you are. Right now, I want you to turn to each other and say one thing that you are optimistic about when it comes to Finland. Ready? Go. And for those of you streaming at home, feel free to use our hashtags on the screen behind me and tag us on LinkedIn, and we'll engage with you there and also on X. All right. Let's see if I can get everyone's attention back. I know, I love the sound of a buzzing room. All right, so a few of you shout some of them out. What are you optimistic about? AI, that's a great one. Thank you, Hanna Kivelä from Fujitsu. Yeah. Talent, Everest, wonderful. Pardon? Youth, oh, that's a great one. AI, talent, youth, there's so much more. And I'm optimistic because in Finland, where there's a will, there's a way. And we've had some major wins since Amcham was founded. Some of the major wins we've had through the years are getting FDI into the government program for the first time, ensuring that the public ecosystem has FDI aftercare on its agenda, promoting an FDI vision for Finland, and many of our recommendations are reflected in the current government program. These are the result of persistent conversations between Amcham leaders in our community. Many of you are here today, so thank you for the work you're doing. Government representatives and staff. The voices of international investors help ensure that Finland thrives. And part of that voice is our Country Managers Network, the platform for leaders of international businesses to share best practices and to make their voice heard. So Rosa Thurman, Rosa, if you can stand up so everyone can see you, is the Director of Foreign Affiliates and Sustainability, and she has tirelessly coordinated today's event. She's really the engine behind FDI at Amcham, and leads our Country Managers Network. So if you're a country manager, I know we have several new to us tuning in. If you're a country manager looking for a place that is truly designed for you, chat with Rosa. And if you're a public decision maker looking to support companies in continuing their investments, then engaging with the Amcham team is your best starting point because we spend all day talking with our country managers. Can all of my Amcham team members raise your hand so we know where you are? All right, we're spread out throughout the room. Excellent. So, at Amcham, and in this room especially, I want us to be rational optimists. Because every day in the news, we read something that can bring us down. The government is making cuts, VAT just increased, the Bank of Finland is telling us that our GDP will contract by 0.5%, and the pressures of inflation remain. These walls of negativity that surround us can feel claustrophobic. We know that doomsaying all too easily conveys gravitas, while optimism can sometimes be construed as naivete. And I want the leaders in this room and on this stream to ignore all that and focus on the insight. Focus on the experts in this room. Because we've been working on the topic of FDI for a long time, and the country managers tuning in today want to bring more investment to Finland. We have all the right ingredients. In this country, we have all the building blocks to grow our investments, to really reach our full potential as a hub for high-tech innovation, for green energy, for connectivity, and for public-private partnerships. My favorite part of this job is knowing that even in the face of extreme challenges, the Amcham community believes that we can make this happen. And that's because we're optimistic. We know the facts, and we have rational and logical reasons for this optimism. So what we need from you today is to listen, to open your mind to different viewpoints, and then to take action. Albert Einstein once said, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. So let's be rationally optimistic together and be brave enough to do things a little differently. And on that note, it's a great pleasure to kick off our programming to welcome Jacob Densick, Chief Economist and Global Sustainability Research Leader at the IBM Institute for Business Value. Welcome, Jacob. Thank you.
Morning, everyone. Hope you can hear me. It's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you to Amcham for organizing this fantastic event. I look very much forward to hearing from several of you during the course of the morning and learn a lot about what's going on in Finland and reasons to be optimistic, to Alexander's point. What I want to talk about a bit today is something we see around FDI trends. I'll show you some data that we collect together with Moody's that tracks all FDI flows around the world, FDI announcements, greenfield and expansion investments, and what it means for Finland, how Finland is positioned within that, what it means for Finland's competitive position, and then also talk about a couple of major trends, if you like, that we see as impacting FDI across industries and across all activities, notably AI and sustainability, and then a few final thoughts around moving forward. So let's start with the FDI trends and what we see happening. So in terms of greenfield and expansion investment, in terms of job numbers and projects announced, it has followed very much sort of the economic cycle that we've seen globally. After COVID, there was a big boom in and recovery in FDI flows and FDI projects. But in 2022, with supply chain issues and geopolitical events like the war in Ukraine, we saw a dramatic slowdown, and actually global FDI flows have not quite recovered to those previous high levels experienced in 2022. So that's what we see globally. In terms of where they go, we've also seen a slight shift in the sense that India has now emerged as the top location in terms of job numbers created from FDI flows. But you see the larger economies obviously dominating the picture in terms of market share and FDI. Perhaps no surprises there. More interestingly is to look at FDI flows in relative terms, relative to the size. So we also look at jobs created from foreign direct investment relative to population size. And there you see Singapore and Ireland leading the pack in quite a significant way. They've been doing that for the last 10, 15 years, pretty much. They change rankings sometimes, but they're always very dominant when it comes to FDI, very successful in achieving FDI inflows. Finland ranks 55th, a bit lower than Sweden in 21st, so perhaps room for improvement there. But it gives you an indication of where the current performance is of Finland relative to some of these other countries. But that's, of course, in terms of quantity of jobs. And when it comes to FDI, especially for a country like Finland, it's not just about quantity. Perhaps more importantly, it's about the quality of the investment, the value that the FDI brings to the country, how it ties in with the local economy and generates wealth and prosperity. And we also track how which countries are successful in attracting higher value projects, measured by the knowledge intensity, by the salary, etc., of those projects. And there we see quite a different picture. There's reason to be optimistic, if I put it that way. Finland ranks 4th globally in terms of average value of projects, ahead of your Nordic peers, and I say that as a Dane. And there's actually been quite a lot of success in Finland in terms of attracting high-value projects, notably in tech and business services, etc. So why is that then? How do we explain this performance of Finland? Well, to understand that, we like to look at the competitive position of different countries and locations. And the way we look at that is to analyze countries according to two dimensions, quality and cost, because that's how companies, at least we do, and when we work with our clients in the consulting business around where to invest and where to locate activities, we look at these two dimensions because we often see a trade-off between quality and cost. So on the y-axis here, you see a qualitative score. That's all about the skills, the infrastructure, the political environment, regulatory environment, etc., that shapes the operating environment for a company and for a particular facility. And then on the x-axis, you have the cost attractiveness, in this case, the NPV of operating costs in the different locations based on salaries, real estate costs, taxes, etc. Now, you see that locations tend to flow from top left to bottom right. That's the trade-off. Ideally, as a company, you want to be in the top right corner. You want to have cost attractive and high quality. But obviously, those are often difficult to find. There are in certain industries and certain activities, we see locations that offer very cost-attractive and high-quality offer. But most often, companies have to make a choice as to what kind of value proposition, if like, they will choose to locate in. Do you want to go for higher cost, high quality, or lower cost, lower quality, or somewhere in between? What's interesting with Finland is that it offers a very attractive position, almost up in that top right corner when we look at, certainly in tech and software development activities in a European context. So that's actually quite a strong competitive position and perhaps explains why Finland attracts high value investment, especially in the tech industry. But you also see there as you're competing against various other high quality European locations, and some of these are actually more successful in attracting investment than Finland, despite the fact that the competitive position in this map, at least for these type of activities, is very similar. Again, suggesting there's perhaps room for attracting even more to Finland, given the competitive position you have, and making more of that value proposition you have towards foreign investors. So far, so good. What's then happening in the market that is shaping new trends for foreign direct investment? Well, one thing that we're seeing a lot of, and you're probably also hearing about it every day, is AI. It was mentioned before as a reason to be optimistic about Finland, and I think you're right. I think we see already investment at an enterprise level growing quite rapidly. Companies are starting to move from just piloting, for example, generative AI or AI projects to really scaling it, and actually allocating significant investment and budgets towards the AI projects. And what's important here is they're doing that to transform their business operations, transform their enterprises, various functions in the organization. So what we're actually not seeing so much of are dedicated AI projects per se, but we're seeing AI being infused in other projects and other activities in the organization that then changes what organizations are looking for when they make investment decisions as to where to locate, because AI changed how works get done, and therefore also what they're looking for from a location such as Finland when they decide to invest here. They're looking to blend AI with skills, human skills, to drive greater value. What's also interesting is that not only are they investing more in AI, it's also starting to have an impact on actual business performance. It's interesting if you look at the economics of AI at a macro level. A lot of economists will say that we are not seeing the impact of AI in the productivity figures. And that's actually true. We're not seeing it challenging into real productivity growth for most economies around the world yet. But what we're seeing in our research is that at the enterprise level, we're starting to see changes happening. Not only are companies beginning to see higher returns on their AI investments than before, so at a project level we see a change, but also that AI investment is starting to have an impact on company performance. Organizations are starting to attribute a much greater impact of AI on their profitability and their business performance overall, and also on the performance of individual functions. So there's some green shoots, if you like, if you come to AI from an economic perspective, that we expect to see channeled in through higher prosperity and productivity growth for economies as well at the macro level eventually. But this is clearly impacting how organizations are shaping their activities, and they're changing their functions, whether it's AI, whether it's HR, whether it's IT, whether it's finance, whether it's customer services. All these functions are being transformed in different ways by AI at the moment. And the successful locations that will attract that kind of investment going forward for those functions will be those that can offer a proposition that blends, that allows the company to blend the capabilities of AI with human skills and other assets to drive greater efficiency and greater value. A lot of the impact that has come from AI so far has been around, should we say, productivity, automating certain tasks or seeking productivity in certain existing functions and processes. But where the real value opportunity is going forward, the larger value opportunity from AI, that will also have implications from a foreign direct investment perspective, is in actually creating work doesn't even exist today. Reimagining what work will be like. What will the future banker be doing? What will the future HR officer be doing that's different from today? Reimagining what can't even be done today because we don't have the technology. What will that look like going forward? If we can reimagine work at the individual level and also reimagine what the future organization will be doing in a particular industry, what will the future bank look like that it couldn't do before? What can the retail company do that it couldn't do before? That's where the real value is. And similarly, I think it's important we think, what can Finland do in the future that we can't do today as a result of AI? It's not just about using this technology to do what we already do in a more efficient and faster way. It's about doing something even greater that I haven't even thought about before because we didn't have the technology to do it. That's where the real value pool lies, and that's where the real big opportunity also from an FDI and economic prosperity perspective lies when it comes to these technologies. So that's in terms of the potential. But it won't happen by itself. There are a lot of constraints that need to be overcome if organizations, whether they're foreign or domestic, need to be able to tap in to the potential of AI. What we see as key barriers for a lot of organizations is around, it's not actually not about access to the technology per se, it's about data issues, security issues, skills issues. Those enabling factors are much more important for organizations and need to be addressed if Finland is going to compete for functions in FDI in the future that are going to be infused by AI. Because if we don't address those challenges and those barriers, Finland is going to be a less attractive country to invest in, because organizations are increasingly going to be looking for those kind of criteria when they make investment decisions. So that's going to be an important factor going forward in terms of creating opportunities for Finland for FDI across sectors. And that's the important message here as well. It's not about AI investment per se. This is going to influence all kinds of investment that you're receiving at the moment. The other big trend that I want to talk about is around sustainability, also a cross-cutting theme that will impact investment across industries, because it is not just an area that generates FDI in itself. It's something that many organizations are having to deal with, one way or the other. Some of our most recent research around sustainability shows that despite other pressures, sustainability remains a big business priority. Most executives, you see here, more than 3/4 that we surveyed just this year around the world, 5,000 executives, 76% of them said that sustainability is key to their business strategy. And that's partly driven by regulatory and policy pressures. They're partly being forced to take it seriously, not least here in Europe, by regulations, but also because of pressure from customers, from employees, from investors, etc. So it's becoming more and more a part of doing business. In some cases, a license to operate. So it's still influencing corporate behavior. And it also influences FDI decisions. In our work with clients on their foreign investment decisions, we see more and more that sustainability criteria are being infused into the decision-making process. For example, access to renewable energy is becoming increasingly important as well as a criteria. So it's clearly starting to influence FDI as well. But we're also seeing that sustainability in its own right is generating investment flows, and actually more so than other industries overall. So if you see it, whilst the overall global trends showed that FDI flows had not recovered fully from the 2022 levels, or dip after 2022, I should say, you see a very different picture for sustainability-related investment. We actually see rapid growth in that area. And I think it's fair to say Finland is not receiving its fair share of that. I think it ranks in the 70s globally. So again, there's room for improvement there, given the value proposition and the priority of sustainability that is given in Finland. And to attract more of this sustainability investment and to attract investment from companies that are increasingly infusing sustainability into their investment decision, you need to also address some of those barriers that organizations are having in terms of becoming more sustainable. And again, access to technology is only one element here, but it's actually skills that are now the dominant barrier. Also access to data, access to other, or addressing resistance from customers and employees. That change management element around sustainability is becoming much more important. Enabling the transition towards a more sustainable economy is becoming important. And there, it requires work from all parties. This is not something one organization can address on their own. So therefore, it's very important, and this is going to be my final message, to address some of these things and make sure that the right conditions are created for Finland to prosper and succeed from an FDI perspective. Given these trends we're seeing, collaboration will be key. Private sector, public sector, universities, NGOs, and the third sector need to work together to address these challenges. Because it's only by working together that you can actually shape the future you want, and not let these trends happen to you, but actually make them work for Finland going forward. And that's why we, as IBM, are very actively involved in ecosystems. You will have seen, if you have followed anything about IBM in the last few years, openness and collaboration has been one of the big shifts in our strategy, in everything we do, about open technology, open innovation, whether it's AI, quantum-related, or sustainability-related. That's the way forward. And I truly believe that it's events like this and the collaboration that facilitates between different actors that will allow Finland to prosper and succeed as well going forward. So with that, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jacob, for that thought-provoking analysis. Excuse me. So for those of you who work hands-on with FDI questions in the room, Jacob will be staying with us through lunch before he heads back to Brussels. So do make sure to chat with him over lunch to really utilize some of these thought-provoking things he put out there, these figures. I think AI was mentioned in the room, and sustainability is certainly a theme that we will be talking about as the program goes on. So thank you very much, Jacob. Now it's a pleasure to introduce Mika Maliranta, or Dr. Mika Maliranta, Director at Labour Institute for Economic Research Labore in Helsinki, Finland, and Professor at the University of Jyväskylä, who researches Finland's opportunities for exponential growth through R&D and the role foreign affiliates play in the Finnish economy. A warm welcome, Mika.
Thank you, Alexandra. Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. This is a great honor. I like the theme of this seminar, rational optimism. Alexander mentioned it many times, and I think it's very important. Jakob showed us that there is evidence for rational optimism as it comes to the economic growth in Finland in the future. And in my presentation, I will show you more evidence on that. So the title of my talk is Innovation-Based Renewal of Finland. So I will describe the renewal process that has been in progress since early 2010. The structure of my talk is as follows. This talk will be positive and optimistic, but it has very sad beginning. I will describe the origin of our current economic problems. And it is the so-called negative productivity shock that took place in early 2010. And it took place especially in business sector, and it meant that actually a huge amount of jobs were destroyed. Such jobs that used to be high productivity jobs. So after that kind of disaster, you need to build new high productivity jobs. But some steps are needed to recover from that kind of disaster. I will talk about a little bit about these steps, and I will show you evidence that actually those steps actually we have done that in Finland. Finland actually has progressed, and what has taken place, it's actually beneath the surface. And my message is that actually in next 10 years we have reasons to believe that the growth will appear. And the special role will be in innovation activities and R&D. And I will show you that actually, especially the role of foreign-owned companies has been very important. And I believe that the importance is growing. So this collapse was actually very exceptional. This graph shows the relative labor productivity in Finnish business sector, and the benchmark is United States. That is a productivity frontier country. As you can see, we were able to catch up United States and Sweden and Denmark until the 2008, and then we collapsed. So that is the negative technology shock. But what is actually the worst thing was that we were not able to recover from that collapse very soon. Actually, you can see that actually productivity growth in Finnish business sector has been slower than, for example, in Sweden and Denmark. We need to understand why this has happened. But good news. After that collapse, in Finnish business sector, we have a so-called catching up potential. And I will show you that actually we have reasons to believe that we are able to make use of that catching up potential in next 10 years. So every market economy is extremely dynamic. Every year in Finland, about 150,000 jobs are destroyed. That is about 10% of the jobs. But fortunately, usually on average over 150,000 new jobs are created to replace them. But years 2009 and 2016 was exceptional in this respect. Actually, there was more than 300,000 additional jobs were destroyed in that period. It means about 40,000 jobs per year. And in addition, actually, unfortunately, as I already mentioned, these jobs, many of those jobs that used to be high productivity jobs. And that explains why we have now serious problems. So, a lot of jobs were destroyed in Finland, and what needs to be done is to create new high productivity jobs. And it starts from R&D, but from the literature we know that when firm increase in R&D expenditure, nothing happens immediately, because investing takes time. We have evidence that it takes usually 3 to 5 years before you have new knowledge. Then we have new knowledge, but new knowledge is not productive immediately. Many of our new technology is actually useless. but you don't know that in advance. You have to experiment in the market. So there is some kind of implementation or experimentation phase in this evolution process. And we have also evidence that this process takes usually about 3 to 5 years. So almost 10 years has passed, and we can see nothing in the statistics. But the third stage is crucial. There are some young firms that have productivity potential, but they are small. And actually the positive impact at the total level comes when those firms scale up. They increase new high productivity jobs. And if you take those 3 steps together, it's 10 to 20 years it takes before you have recovered from that type of productivity shock. So the rest of the time I will show you evidence that actually this was a theory, and now I have empirical evidence. So there has been renewable research and development work in Finnish companies. This was the sad part of the story, where we look at the R&D expenditures per inhabitant among large firms, firms that employ more than 500 persons. And you can see Finland collapsed. We used to have a high level of R&D. It was Nokia, of course, and a couple of other firms. But now it's actually in international comparison, it's pretty low. The reason in Finland we have so little R&D is because our large firms do so little R&D. So our hope is in the small and young firms. At the same time, when Nokia and some other firms decreased their R&D expenditure, we can see that there was increasing amount of new innovation-based firms that had researchers, and they increased their R&D expenditures. And many of those who started around 2010 were able to continue. And you can see actually later these firms are 5 to 9 years old firms. So the life cycle of the firms was in progress, and it started around 2010. And because of this, currently we have an exceptional large share of the relatively young firms, 5 to 9 years old. Some of those are still small, but many of them are already medium-sized firms, and they spend a lot of money in R&D. So this is actually the hope. This is a crucial part of the Finland, and if this evolution process continues, some of those medium-sized firms will become large ones. So I showed the current problem that we have very little R&D among large firms. It may be corrected when, for example, if some of those medium-sized firms becomes larger and still increase their expenditures in R&D. So if we compare R&D expenditures per inhabitant, so we can see that currently so-called of Mittelstand sector, it has grown. And in international comparison, actually, there is a lot of R&D in this group. As you can see now we are ahead of Denmark and Sweden. And as you can see, the situation was very different in early 2000. So, but foreign money, foreign ownership has played an important role in this renewal process. If we look at the so-called Mittelstand process, and we make distinction domestic-owned firms and foreign-owned firms, you can see that actually the growth in R&D in the Mittelstand sector mostly comes from the foreign-owned companies. It means that international, global markets have confidence in Finnish innovative firms. So that explains why they have increased their expenditure in R&D. The difference between domestic and foreign-owned companies is smaller among small firms and the large ones. So again, the interesting part is the Mittelstand firms, young Mittelstand firms. And as I already have shown, foreign-owned companies have important role to play. In the midst of this renewal process, also the industry structure of the Finnish R&D activities has changed. So the role of private service industries has increased. This is one part of our recovery process. And also venture capitalists believe in Finnish innovative firms. First we can see it in the seed money at the beginning when our problems actually started. The next stage, startup and other early stage phases up to 2010, venture capital investment were higher in Finland than in countries that are relevant for us. And finally, in recent years, later stage venture investments has been higher. Again, this fits the idea that we have a life cycle story here, and actually the venture capital is also venture capital has reacted to this development. It's not only innovation and intangible capital. You need technology, but of course you need machines and buildings and so forth. So if we look at the real investments per employees, how foreign-owned companies has invested in their destination countries. As you can see, in the 2008, the level was very low in Finland, but the level has increased substantially, and now the level is comparable to Sweden and Denmark. So foreign-owned companies also scale up their production in Finland, and this can be seen from this graph. And not only capital and buildings, also we need labor, not only researchers. And this graph shows that also foreign-owned companies has increased jobs more than domestic-owned companies or government-owned, public sector-owned firms. So, some final, I will wrap up my main points and some considerations that need to be taken into account when we are thinking about our policy actions in the future. So it's important to understand the source of our current problems. When you are giving medicine to patient, you need to know what is the problem of the patient. I have shown that it was the productivity level of the Finnish business sector. And the critical factor in Finnish economic growth is the increase in productivity in companies. That should be now clear. For increasing productivity, companies need, of course, innovations. Economic growth is changed and innovation is changed. It's clearly the case that innovation has an important role to play. And I have shown evidence that actually firms have invested a lot of money to innovate in Finland. But we need also time and patience, because the renewal is time consuming. You need to understand that this recovery goes through the different steps. And for innovations, companies need, of course, financial incentives. Therefore, you need to think about taxation. There is there is new evidence in economic literature that actually taxation plays even more critical role in this aspect at this point. Innovators are very sensitive to taxation. This is something we have learned from the recent literature. And we need functioning markets. Competitive authorities have important role to play here. The reason for this is that actually we have theoretical and empirical evidence that firms that need to compete with others, they typically innovate. If competition is lacking, for some reason firms innovate less. It's important firms that they need to struggle a little bit. So competition policy is very important part of this toolbox of the sensible policy steps. And finally, of course, for innovations, we need innovators, and innovating is very challenging, difficult. We need skilled people, because without skilled people, R&D money is useless. This should be clear. But it means that we have to do something for it. And in the long run, it means we need to take care of that universities have resources to do a basic research, and they are able to learn the students' relevant knowledge that is needed in innovation activities. And final sentence. We need immigration. High skill immigration, but also all kind of immigration. Because people is something where this all start from. And we need more people. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mika. There were so many points there that I'd like to repeat. Thank you so much, Mika, for that food for thought, because I think it gives an excellent starting point for the next portion of our program. And so next, I get to hand the stage over to the General Manager Finland for Bristol Myers Squibb and Amcham Partner Extraordinaire, Evris Mikalopoulos. Welcome, Evris. Thank you.
The way Alex did it, I have my timer here because I'm panicking that Rosa's going to give the sign that I haven't realized that we're out of time. So, hi everyone, my name is Evris Mihalopoulos. I'm the General Manager of Bristol Myers Squibb. We're a pharmaceutical company in Finland operating more than 50 years, but we're not going to talk about life sciences today, specifically. It is my pleasure to introduce and welcome to the stage Jaana Tuomi, CEO of Enters Espoo, Teemu Widgren, CEO of Microsoft Finland, Mark Bulla, CEO of Blaster Green Steel, and last but not least, Topi Manner, President and CEO of Elisa. And the seats are random, so just pick whichever one you want. Maybe we do this. There we go. So, in case people are wondering, what we want to do today is take advantage of these experienced and senior leaders and discuss a bit how they see foreign direct investment, how they see it linked to growth for the country, but also, of course, an intersection between technology, sustainability, and basically touch on all the topics that we've been talking so far. So my first question will actually be towards Mark, and you're the closest one to me. So Mark, Blaster Steel is just in the process of doing an investment of 4 billion euros or dollars? Euros. Even better, in Finland. Tell me something, Mark. What was it that made Blaster decide that they would relocate you in Finland and set up house here in Finland?
Yeah. First of all, thanks to Amcham for putting this on and inviting me to participate today. When you locate an industrial project such as this, it's not an easy decision to do. It's obviously, you don't pick up and move an industrial plant like a steel plant. There's a lot of things that can be picked up and moved after a few years, but an industrial plant does not get moved very easily. So once you make a decision, you've got to commit to it. And I think you really have to think about, when we look at citing a mill like a steel plant such as Blaster, we look at the obvious, and that is there is demand in Europe for what we believe to be low emission steel. So we know the demand is here in Europe. Think about it, we could have gone anywhere in the world, right? But the demand is here, it's being policy driven, and we now see consumer pull for low emission steel. But the other part of it is we know the Nordics. Why are the Nordics and Scandinavia so attractive to locating a steel plant or a low emission steel, iron and steel making plant? Because we need power, power, power. It comes down to electricity. If we don't have power, we cannot run these plants. And if you add hydrogen to it, it's an even bigger demand for electricity. And of course, we want renewable energy. We want the fossil-free energy. These are the things that make us a decarbonized product, or we can decarbonize our industry. So when we looked at Finland, we took a look at Norway, we took a look at Sweden, and we took a look at Finland. The opportunity in Finland is because it is a developed electricity market. Having a site in Inko is critical. It's an ice-free port for the most part. It is a deep water port. It has a substation that is existing, allows us to be able to use that existing substation that's on the FinGrid system. And of course, we have the national grid system that feeds this area because it was the largest coal-fired plant in Scandinavia. So this is why we chose Finland, in addition to the fact that we're close to a very large population for labor. High engineering numbers in as far as people in Finland, those are what attracted us.
Excellent. And maybe a follow-up question, Mark. And how has the journey been so far? Anything that stands out versus your experience in the US and Sweden?
I mean, I've been here, what, 110 days or 120 days, so the journey's been full, but I've enjoyed it. I think, first, I really enjoy Helsinki, and I don't say that just because I'm in Helsinki. I spent 2.5, 3 years in Stockholm. I really enjoy Helsinki, and I find the people to be very friendly, which is part of what I think is the interesting part of this journey is that, look, we've had more hurdles than I would have expected in the local community in Inko. I really can't understand it. I spoke to a couple ministers yesterday who told me, in Vaasa and other areas, there's been zero complaints against a lot of economic development. So why we're having this in Inko, I'm really not sure. I'll take responsibility as the CEO of the company that we have to give a voice to those who are, I believe, the silent majority. But if we can get past this, we're going to attract dollars. We're going to attract money. I've been part of 6 of these steel company startups. I love the industry, and I think we can and will build this green iron and green steel making plant in Finland.
Excellent.
Thanks.
Thank you. Teemu, talking about big investments, Microsoft has been in the forefront here, and a big data center being planned in Espoo, and you're in the process of going through and bringing to market to Finland. But I want to twist the question a bit because Microsoft is a global organization with multiple affiliates, and I know the competitiveness between affiliates on making sure that we get investments to our different countries. How was that process, and what kind of, let's say, deliverables have you promised internally Microsoft that you can actually bring so that they actually say this was a successful investment?
Well, there were a lot of questions in there, but first of all, thanks for having me here, Teemu from Microsoft. And first of all, I would like to open up that I'm also really positive about the potential that Finland has going forward. And there's 2 sides to that. First of all, even before this data center investment, Microsoft as a global company has decided to invest R&D here in Finland. We are doing surface device R&D in Tampere. We are doing quantum technology research and mixed reality research here in Espoo. So that's a sign that we have certain competencies here in Finland, because as a global company, as you said, we could position these R&D centers wherever in the world, decided to come to Finland. So that's one positive side. And the other one is this technology-driven market shift that we are in right now, that was brought up by Jacob, called AI. And in Finland, we are really technologically advanced country at the moment. We have good kind of connectivity all around. That's amazing. We have talent, as I told, and building on top of all of this, AI, a technology-driven market shift. So there's nothing stopping us from being on the forefront while this AI wave rolls over the world going forward as well. And around this AI, we feel great responsibility as Microsoft that it needs to be us and companies like us to help Finland actually come out of this wave as one of the leading countries in the world. And for this, in Finland, we have two initiatives that we really believe strongly in. One is around competencies and skills, because even though we do have skills out there, skills need to evolve going forward. And for this, we have built this beautiful public-private partnership called Skills for Jobs here in Finland, where we work together with education entities, private sector companies to make sure that the technical skills demand is actually fulfilled by people who are studying at the moment. And one concrete example out of this was the announcement earlier this week about Data Center Academy that we ramped up here in capital area with Omnia and Luxia, two education entities. So skills, one part of the work we do, but the other one is, of course, building AI infrastructure here in Finland. And that's what this data center investment is all about. And I guess we talk a lot more about that through this panel.
Perfect. Topi, question for you. Leading Elisa, you're in the forefront of digitalization and sustainability. What in your mind has contributed, and we've heard a lot of the things, of course, but what in your mind has been the main contributor for Finland to lead in this area? But also, and more importantly, what do you think needs to continue happening for us to keep on leading in this area?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, if we look at the current status of digitalization in Finland, I think that there would be, a number of great assets that we have. We have the people, we have the competence, we have the know-how, we have, some critical companies, some of them being global companies and global capabilities, like with Nokia. If we look at the data society, the average data consumption per capita in Finland is first in the world. So that is something where we are leading worldwide, and actually that is also something where Elisa has been contributing quite a bit, because for example, the mobile subscription plans are different in Finland in a sense that we provide unlimited data with same monthly subscription for 100% of the customers. So that model has been contributing to the data consumption in Finland quite a bit. So great assets, great strengths to have. And if we go back in time, that what has been leading to this situation, I think that coming back to 80s, coming back to 90s, one of the very, very fundamental things in that one, in the long-term development, has been simply wise regulation. Mm-hmm. So the kind of regulation, for example, that with the data networks has been, auctioning the spectrum out there for telcos on relatively moderate prices, but requiring the investment to data networks. And therefore, if you compare the data networks in Finland today to Germany or basically any given country in Europe and worldwide, the quality of the networks is just much better. And it boils down to wise regulation. It boils down to R&D, having globally leading companies like Nokia, also pioneering individual companies, Elisa being one of them, and then now lately companies like Microsoft. So these kinds of things can be seen to be in the background of this development. So going forward, I think that what we will need as a society to really sort of scale up developments from the current starting point where we are not living up to our full potential, in my view. I think that we need to be better at leveraging the competence base, the know-how that we have. We need to provide more growth incentives for companies and for individuals alike. That brings us back to taxation. So that being one of the things. Furthermore, we need innovative and wise regulation, like we had, 20 to 30 years ago, with foresight, and not to regulate things, not to approach things from risk perspective in order to mitigate, but to enable businesses, to enable growth. I think that is something that we need. And then companies and business leaders will need to hit the growth mode and take a couple of courageous bets and lead the way and show the way and be ready to change the culture and address the human part of transformation that is associated with technology and growth always. You need to kill some of the conventions in the organizations.
Thank you. We can talk for hours, I think, on these specific topics. Janna, Espoo has been extremely successful in attracting investments to the region. What role do collaborative platforms such as Quantinova and ecosystems play in the success of that? And what are 2 or maybe 3 things that you could advise other regions to start doing so that we all maybe benefit in the same way without taking too much of the glory of Espoo?
Thank you, Evris. Yes, we have been really successful and we are very happy about it. So we have these international headquarters in our city, and we have these scale-ups and soonicorns in our city, where international investors have been, or they have found the startups which are now scale-ups and even internationally ranked soonicorns. So forecasted to be unicorns soon. And I can see here at least one IQM, Milja Kalliokoski here. So yes, we are very proud of these companies. But as we know, still attracting investments, it's hard work alone. So we have built these kind of collaboration platforms, many different type of ones, and Quantinova is one of those. So we have noticed that it's much easier to attract investments when you work together. So Quantinova is the largest shared clean room for microelectronics and quantum computing technologies. And we do this together with VTT, Aalto University, City of Espoo, and of course Enter Espoo, which is owned by the City of Espoo, and then over 20 companies in microelectronic industry. So we all together, we build the community. So this Quantinova project, it's about 500 million euros altogether, 30,000 square meters. And although the physical buildings will be ready 27, 28, we already now have built the community around Quantinova. So we have engaged companies in planning and collaborating. So it's much stronger than to also attract more companies to this collaboration platform. So as I mentioned, this is one of the examples of these kind of collaboration platforms. We have many other as well. We have calculated that over 40, so it's a big number. So the newest ones, which I wanted to also share with you, is Kemiras Erika. That's a shared green chemistry laboratory, and it will be ready already next year in Finland. And that's for startups and also larger companies which are interested in using a shared green chemistry laboratory. And the other one is a defense sector. So around NATO Diana's test center and accelerator is also forming up this kind of defense cluster. Just to mention a few examples.
Excellent. And I think Teemu has a follow-up.
To build on what you said on the collaboration around innovation, just to say another example of that, and referring to your question about how do we compete about these investments globally. So one thing that's special for the data center project we have here in the capital area is that it's the largest excess heat capture project from a data center in the world globally. And that's huge. And that's kind of a result of innovation here in Espoo, because it was the innovation of Fortum, who happens to be headquartered in Espoo in the same building with us, that has made this innovation around how to capture heat and then direct it to this district heating system within capital area. And with this, once the data center runs 100% on renewable energy, the excess heat generated by the data center will be fed to the district heating system, and that will amount to roughly 250,000 district heating consumers in capital area, kind of the volume that comes out there. And that's built on innovation from Finland, from Espoo, Fortum.
If I can add that now our plan is to build this kind of collaboration platform around this project.
Thank you. Thank you both for that discussion. Mark, back to you. We've touched upon the grid, we've touched upon location, you've touched upon people, but still it's a bit of a remote area. How easy is it for you to get the right people there and the right talent there? And is it enough with locals, or do you also need foreigners?
Yeah, you know, I'm glad you started with people on this one, because I got to say something, an observation. I think we need to add another word to our language here today. If we talk about growth in Finland and opportunities, and you know, as an industrial manufacturing person, I love R&D, I love people, I love labor, I love all these things we're throwing out there. But the one word I haven't heard us use yet is entrepreneurial spirit, or entrepreneur. And this is what I think we somewhat lack, maybe in my observation in the short time I've been in Finland, is this understanding that individuals, not entrenched companies, not existing companies, but entrepreneurs are the lifeblood of really new economies and new transitions. And I think if you have that type of person, then you have growth. And I think so if you ask me, do I think we can attract talent? I think that's part of what we have to do as a company, is position ourselves with a little bit of a purpose-driven, but also a human side that attracts people that says, I want to do something different. I want to be a different type of company. I want to create a different type of job for myself. And so those people will be attracted to startups like ours. Whether we're an hour from Helsinki or 40 minutes from Hanko. I mean, we've got a lot of people in the Uusimaa area, if I'm saying that properly. And so there's certainly an awful lot of population in this area. And I'm not worried about the labor at all. Do I think we'll have people from all over the globe? I'd like to be an international company. I think it's important to have diversity of ideas and opinions. I think that brings better productivity to the company. So if we're able to attract talent from other parts of the world, experts in their area or in their field, then we'll do that. But I certainly have always been a proponent of, we create jobs in the communities in which we live in. We need to be good stewards of our community, and part of that is employing people locally.
Thank you. Topic, I'm going to turn a bit at the discussion, but before I do so, any comment regarding people, diversity of thought from your perspective?
Well, absolutely. First of all, I would completely agree with Mark's point about entrepreneurship and entrepreneurs being needed. And I think that what we need in this country is the growth mindset, and people respond to incentives. So for that, we need the growth incentives as well, for companies, for individuals alike. So that's pretty clear. And then, you know, when we come back to the question of people, and when we come to question of talent, whether we are talking about people who already work and live here, or whether we talk about international talent, I think that we need all kinds of talent. We need diversity in the companies, more diversity in all sorts of ways. You know, in terms of cultural background, in terms of educational background, in terms of you know, school of thoughts, and you know, horizontal thinking, and all things like that. And of course, the bottom line in all of this is that the country has a diminishing population, and the birth rate is not looking that good, as we all know. So we will be needing you know, a lot of international talent coming in. We need to welcome people. We need to get them integrated. So I think that in my book, the recipe for Finland's success going forward is very much about research, innovation, incentivizing people who already are here to grow, and then integrating the international talent.
Thank you. And now I'll turn a bit the topic of the discussion. We saw from the statistics, and I don't think any of us need to really just see the statistics, the war in Ukraine had an impact on foreign direct investment. It had an impact all around the world. It had an impact in the countries surrounding and very close to Russia. What are your thoughts around the link between foreign investors feeling safe to invest in Finland and Finland having the right infrastructure to support national security?
I think that the NATO membership plays a big role in this one. I mean, when I talk with international business leaders in telco industry or previously in aviation, where I used to work, you know, the NATO membership has changed the way people perceive the country risk of Finland at this point of time, and therefore it has promoted investment in this country. So I think that is clear. From my perspective, we are still in the very early stages of leveraging that opportunity going forward. And then in terms of the national infrastructure, I think that we need to acknowledge the opportunities, you know, like the NATO membership. And then, of course, we need to be very observant about the risks. And our geographic location comes with specific risks related to cybersecurity, related to the connectivity of the country. So if you look at the Finnish society at large, it is clear that we will need to invest more than most countries to cybersecurity, given the proximity of Russia. In terms of our connectivity in data traffic, for example, if you look at the overseas cables and so on and so forth, we need multiple backups, basically to all compass directions, with the exemption of the east. So those will need to be built, and then for sort of security of supply reasons, for resilience reasons of the society, we need physical data centers in Finland, and we need the kind of data centers that have advanced chip technology, and with that, you know, advanced computing power. So in my world, those are critical elements of national infrastructure, and then something that will mitigate the risks, but also will create the kind of investment environment that foreign direct investment needs, especially in terms of tech.
Thank you. Mark? Yes.
I want to jump in on this because it's one of those topics that I talk about frequently with investors. The steel industry is critical to security. But I talk about security in a little bit different terms. And if we could pull maybe some headlines right now, G7 and BRICS. And if we take a look at the BRICS countries and the G7 countries, there is a big disparity in my industry, in the steel industry, as to really who controls this. And right now in the BRICS, if you look at the iron ore producers, which is the beginning of the steel value chain, the iron ore producers, the largest one is Australia. The rest of them, all BRICS countries. iron ore, the top 5, 4 of them are BRICS countries. If you take a look at iron making, green iron making like we'd like to do in Inco, if you look at iron making, guess who the biggest importer is of iron into Europe? Russia. The largest producers of iron are BRICS countries. Now, let me take it one step further. Let's talk steel. The largest producers, the top 10 producers of steel in the world, 4 of them are BRICS, 3 are G7, but the other ones that aren't in there, Iran and Turkey. And as we know, Turkey just applied to be in the BRICS organization as a NATO country. Look, I can't tell you enough. The economic security of Europe is going to depend on, I believe, the foundational industry of steel. And we are at a cusp of decision right now in Europe as to what we're going to do about it. And I can't stress enough how important I think this is. And I talk about it with investors, and they're getting it. They're starting to understand the importance of economic security that has a basis for everything else. And if I may, just one quick point. In 1990, I was fresh out of college, just started in the steel industry, a couple years into it. And I was an inside salesperson, and one of the senior sales guys said, "Oh boy, there's a war coming." And I said, "Huh?" And he said, "Look at these orders from this customer." And I said, what about them? He goes, "Well, I shouldn't tell you this, but this is shell casings." And I said, "Shell casings for what?" He said, for bombs. And I said, "Really?" Now, we all know what happened in 1991, right? It was the first Desert Storm. So if you think the steel industry isn't critical to every part of our security as a country or as a region, I can tell you it is. Thanks.
Thank you. Taking it to a more positive side, right? Although it's very important, I think it's very important. What we're discussing is very important, right? At the end of the day, what we want to do is attract foreign direct investment to the country, and that can be done by multiple ways, by creating safe environment in this country. But I want to bring it back to talent, and I'm going to go for another question for Janna. So a bit of the link to talent and investments. How do you see that link for your region? And how do you ensure that your region meets those needs so that investments do keep on coming into your region?
Very good question. Without talent, we wouldn't have collaboration platforms or attractive investment possibilities. Because talents attract talents, and behind innovations there are always talents, aren't there? In Espoo we have a lot of talents in very many technologies like microelectronics and ICT, quantum technology, bio and clean tech, food tech, space satellites, and many other, of course, energy and smart city, etc. Just to mention a few. So these sectors, they are important, and even we have 20% of our private sector employees work in ICT sector, which is about 20,000 ICT employees. Still, that's not enough. For example, for microelectronics and quantum technology, we really need more talent, and we think that the only answer for that again is collaboration. Collaboration with companies, with research centers, universities and vocational schools. We even have a Finnish school of watchmaking, but still all of these, it's not enough. We need to do something. And we have now one new initiative together with Tampere, Oulu, Joensuu and Espoo, related to EU CHIPS Act, and that is the CHIPS Competence Center. And of course, that's one these kind of activities, but we need more of these kind of activities. And the collaboration is core in this.
Thank you, Janna. So we're coming close to a Q&A, but I'll start with Teemu, and this is going to be a question to everyone. One thing that you're optimistic about, that you want to call out, and since we're having an amazing panel afterwards with some senior public speakers. Public speaker, that's the wrong way to say it, right? I'll skip. I'm missing the word in my language. What is it that we would ask them to prioritize?
First of all, the optimistic side. We as Microsoft, we are currently running 200 data centers around the world. And our CEO said this summer in our earnings call that data center capacity is one of the biggest limiting factors of the digitalization of the world, and with that for our business as well. And the same applies for all of the competition out there. So building data centers will be a thing that keeps on happening for the next decade or two because the amount of compute needed out there, it's massive. In Finland, why we decided to invest here? We have availability of green energy and green energy pipeline in a way that we have a policy that we will not come in and buy the existing energy in the grid, but we make power purchase agreements on additional green energy to be built on top of what the country already has out there. And Finland did have that strong green energy pipeline, and we still do. So there's still way room to grow out there. We have massive amounts of land out there. That's not the case in all of the European countries, not even talking about other countries around the world. The land is stable, it's not shaking, climate is cool. We are a good place to start building this data center and AI capacity going forward. And we have a dream that Finland would be the biggest Microsoft data center region in Europe going forward. So my personal hope is that this data center investment or data center region investment is not the last one we do here in Finland. We are currently sourcing for next locations, for next data centers. So I'm positive that this data center economy would be something that Finland could build on.
Thank you. Topi?
As a business leader, what makes me optimistic today is that after 17 years of no growth in the Finnish economy, I now start to see that there is more and more discussion about growth on societal level and in companies. So there's an emerging growth mindset, something that has been lacking a bit during the past years. So that is a reason for optimism, long-term optimism in my book. And like Mika showed, for example, many of the medium-sized companies are starting to scale things up in terms of R&D investment and becoming more international and being more growth-oriented. I think that is absolutely and exactly what we need. So we need wide spectrum of companies to scale things up, to make those long-term bets, courageous bets, and therefore the structure of our economy will be changing, and we will be back to a growth path during the next 10 years.
Thanks, Topi. Mark?
Yeah, my optimism would be this. The word I'd use is hunger. My short time that I've been in Finland, Finnish people have been front lines of a lot of things, right? They've been challenged over the years. They've been the underdog, so to speak, in Scandinavia and Nordics. But I see a hunger because the country has identified the need for growth. The question is, can it be translated to action? And that's where I would challenge our public officials and our leaders of the country, because some of those are families that have made money in Finland. We need them to stand up and be bold and say, we need to make these changes, right? We need to speak up on behalf of these projects and say, enough. We need to make this happen now. That'd be my 2 points.
Very quick, Jana, because we're really eating into the Q&A part.
Yes, very shortly. Yes, so I feel very optimistic because we have those scale-ups, which Mika Maliranta also mentioned, that now they have got a larger investment. Of course, they need more money. And our challenge is because we don't have that much old money than, for example, Swedish, so we need foreign investments. And then I would like to point out another thing. because we work in Otaniemi campus, and every day we can see the new generations. I really trust on those because they really can, or they are international and they can collaborate, and they are just so clever. So I think that the future is bright.
Excellent.
Just
Yes,
very quickly to build on that one. I think that yes, absolutely we need foreign direct investment, and we will need to do a lot to attract that. But at the same time, I would like to see more the foreign capital and Finnish capital to join forces, because if you look at the Finnish society at large, yes, the government and the public sector has debt nowadays. But the private sector, companies and individuals alike, is not that leveraged, not that indebted. So meaning that the private sector actually has lending capacity that can generate capital going forward. And that capital can be channeled to investments. But the risk will need to be worth taking. And for that, we need to hunger, and we need lower taxes, and we need, environmental permits and all sorts of permits to move forward, and that will be certainly smoothening the growth path.
Thank you all. So, questions. The mic is coming from there.
Hi, so my name's Oliver. I'm from a company called Seppo. This is actually a question for all of you, really. Now, I understand that a lot of your work is all really much centered around human beings and your teams and customers, which I think is really, really cool. And I'm really, really glad to have the opportunity to ask a question. So when you're actually trying to communicate new strategies going forward in terms of your innovation with your own companies, how easy is it to rely on traditional methods, or is there room for improvement in the way that you're actually able to communicate your new strategies and innovations with the team and customers?
So one will take. Okay, so Teemu was quickest, so go for it.
Yeah,
and then
I
we'll
think.
go for another one.
Yeah, I think these days the challenge with communicating long-term strategy is that we are in the middle of a big shift around AI, and none of us actually know what future looks like 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And therefore, I think the thing that I try to communicate to our teams is that now is the time to be brave, try out new things, break things, and see what works and what doesn't. So instead of kind of spending all the time in the world trying to guess where we land in 10 years, now let's start trying and see kind of where we are heading.
Thank you. So time for one more, and there was a hand up here, sorry. On this, we're going on the right side.
Thank you, Mikko Särälä from Tekniikan Akateemiset. One of the big changes Finland has had in the past 10-15 years is that we've had a huge growth of international students that do their theses, masters in here. And I'm wondering whether companies have picked up on that change. And the reason why I'm asking is that it's very traditional for companies to hire students, and that starts typically during summertime, so springtime is the hiring season. But the international students, they need to start their thesis in January. And have you realized that there's a fall season for hiring really talented people to your companies? And what could we do to make that happen across Finland? Because half of the students, when they graduate, they leave Finland because they still have trouble finding work. And we know that doing the thesis is a very big part of getting into the Finnish labor market.
Topi?
Yeah, I think that's a very sort of important question and insightful question. So in Elisa, we are on the case, so to speak. So we have acknowledged this situation. If you look at the kind of people that we have been recruiting over the past couple of years, that pool of talent has been, increasingly more diverse in terms of ethnic backgrounds, cultural backgrounds, nationalities, and so forth. And if we now, I mean, if we go back 5 years in time, 20% of Elisa employees were non-Finns at that point of time. Now we are around 35%, and we will be, crashing the threshold of 40% relatively soon. So nowadays, close to 40% of international backgrounds and increasing numbers, something like 30 nationalities in the company.
Thank you, Topi. Thank you everyone for the questions. I'm going to hand over to Alex to take over. And again, a shout out to Amcham and the amazing work that you do every single day. Thank you to the panelists for a great discussion.
Thank you, Everest, Topi, Teemu, Mark, and Jana. That is a very tough act to follow, but we are going to do our best. So today I'll be moderating the second and final panel discussion. So I would like to warmly welcome to the stage Petri Peltonen, Undersecretary of State, Ministry for Economic Affairs and Employment, Johanna Kentala-Lehtonen, Doctor of Social Sciences, Chief Specialist and Secretary General of the Expert Panel for Sustainable Development under the auspices of the Prime Minister's Office, Teppo Rantanen, Executive Director of the City of Tampere and who serves on the Business Finland Board, and Ted Apter, Special Advisor, Industrial Policy for Suomen Ekonomit. Welcome, guys. Wow. We have just heard some amazing insight from our business leaders. And I'd like to take a moment to ask if you would like to immediately respond to any of the discussion that they had. Do you have any reflections or thoughts on some of the things that our CEO shared? Who would like to go first? Ted, go right ahead.
I think the optimism part is very important, and Mika highlighted how we had the period of time where we lost the additional 40K jobs. And we're probably going to a time where we can add 40K or even more jobs per year compared to what it's been. And there's a lot of things we could do for that. And many people highlighted enablers. The grid, talent, R&D funding, we have it all, and we can add to that. And I think the measure should be what's the crystal clear view for a long-term growth mindset for Finland.
Fantastic. One of the things that Topi mentioned was this emerging growth mindset, and that there's been a shift over the last few years, and I cannot help but think that there are people in this room we also have to thank for that. Petri, in your mind, has there been a shift when it comes to the emerging entrepreneurial and growth mindset?
I think the shift is there. I think especially the young generation, I think, is a great example of really seeing the world, seeing Finland differently, and seeing the opportunities as well. So in that sense, I do believe that the change is there. It takes time. It's different in various sectors of the society and in various sectors of industries. Obviously, the conventional industries have their own grounds to evolve gradually, and then obviously the startups really challenge and re-innovate existing industries and create new. So I think that the dynamics is there, but obviously it's something that the government cannot really control. We cannot pass legislation that would somehow tackle those issues. So I think it's an issue that needs to be between the ears and in the mindset.
I think no one can control it, but everyone can encourage each other to embrace that kind of mindset, and having a entrepreneurial growth mindset among our decision makers is really important as well. Speaking of that, Johanna, many of our international companies, and indeed Teemu actually just mentioned it, that Finland's climate targets and Finland being a clean energy superpower are some of the main reasons to invest here. Following the news in Finland over the last 2 years, we've seen conflicting messages on how welcome FDI is to Finland and the differences of opinion Mark mentioned between local communities and the needs of investors could slow down this green transition in Finland. So in your view, how can we bring parties together? We heard the need for collaboration. How can we bring different parties together and find that balance between enabling green investments for a fossil-free future, economic growth, and local interests?
Thank you. I think this is a very crucial question, and I also like to thank Mark bringing this already out because it helped me to bring my point. I know that in Ingo you've had some issues with the local communities, and I think this is a key when thinking of the green transition in Finland and all the investments we need there, is that we bring more attention to the acceptability for the local companies. So the collaboration with the locals and bringing all the relevant stakeholders together and also using the methods that there is and should be brought out to a collaborative governance and mutual gains approach, so that all the gains would be shown not only for the investor and the company or for the whole society, but also the benefits that the locals can get. So to be interested about the interests there, but curious, what is this really about? Because there is probably something beneath all this, and there can be old things going back, but being curious and getting a platform where everyone is welcomed and actually having a debate on what it is that should be done. So bringing the acceptability of the society for this transition, and I think this is crucial for the society as a whole, because it also makes the community stronger, and that makes them more resilient. And this comes to the security, so many issues, and maybe we can come back to this during this discussion.
Thank you. I've said before that, that old proverb, all roads lead to Rome. I really believe that all roads lead to FDI, because everything is very interlinked. And, using the word curious, I love that word. One of the places that has been a best practice for this kind of mutual gains approach that you mentioned is Tampere. Tampere was ranked first in the vitality comparison of Finnish urban centers this year. You've been very successful, Teppo, in attracting foreign investments and international experts. I don't think it's a coincidence that Teppo was was the first chair of Amcham. So a long history championing FDI. So what can other regions learn from Tampere's success in attracting international investments?
Well, I think one of the things that we have been working quite systematically is to show the bold decisions that can be made, so not shine off of things. And we as a city have been investing a lot and making sure that the investments follow, which we have seen happening. We have had a huge influx of R&D companies putting their R&D, both international and domestic companies. And I think one of the key success factors there is the seamless working of our ecosystem. So for us, the companies, the universities, the public sector, everybody works and speaks the same language. If you talk to anyone in Finland, in Tampere, about this sort of importance of things, I think you get the same message. Actually, I'm driving from here to the airport to take off to Austin, Texas next week, with a delegation of 6 Finnish companies, mostly from Tampere, University, Chamber of Commerce, and we meet a lot of companies, universities, public sector officials in Austin. And one of the topic points is to talk about chips and defense and the potential FDI that we are getting back to Finland. We need to be optimistic, positive, actively working on things. I think that's the secret sauce.
All right, so optimistic, positive, and actively working on things. I think we're getting a lot of stuff done in this room. Ted, you are the special advisor for the largest organization of business school graduates with over 55,000 members. We've heard promising things from other panelists. What in your mind is the missing piece of the puzzle? How can we pull this all together to kind of push us forward?
I think the long-term growth mindset and also like a vision for it is the key thing, where the pieces are talent. We yesterday came out with our proposal that Finland should have 60,000 net immigration annually, whereas on 2010s, the average was 15K. And without the talent flow, we're not going to have enough investments in Finland. But as Teppo mentioned, just going for the ambition level and putting it high enough is going to then get the investments to come. And one thing where I think Finland should go forward, and the government budget plan for next year has a commitment to it, is to add capacity to the grid. If we add capacity to the grid, we're going to have more energy production, we're going to have more investments related to green transition quicker here, and by just giving that commitment, but also then going through that with adding a lot of money to it, and recapitalization of Fingrid, we're going to enable a huge transition, and then the demographics can actually change a lot. Because if we can add a lot of jobs all around Finland, not just in the capital region, which is also good, being a Helsinkian, we're gonna have a much more ambitious level of the future growth.
I love that, because I love these concrete, we can increase the capacity of the grid and then follow back, how exactly we can get that done. So Petri, we've heard some ambitious ideas from Teppo, from Johanna, from Ted, from the previous panel. How can we replicate this on a national scale? In your opinion, is this formula that they've outlined enough for us to be a growing, attractive country? Should we just have tons of Tamperes everywhere, tons of Espos?
I'm Tampere myself, so
yes.
I wouldn't mind. But yes, I think the state of mind is useful, but it's not enough. I mean, we have to be realistic as well, and I think optimism is obviously absolutely needed, but I think we need to identify those areas where we truly excel. And there are those, but obviously the competition is tough. But obviously we don't have to win the whole competition. There are only certain areas where Finland can contribute and excel, and being able to identify those and build on those, I think, is absolutely needed. And what are those elements? Obviously, I think that's the question size of our national economy, more or less. But I think, obviously, when it's been now discussed a lot here, R&D. We've been investing on R&D for the past 30 years. Mm-hmm. The blunt question, I mean, where are the results of those previous investments today? We're now increasing our investments. That's all good and fine. But I mean, if it takes then, was it 6 to 10 years for those to materialize? I mean, we should somehow, make sure that those R&D investments are really focused on areas that are really propelling the economy. Mm-hmm. And I think it means that we need to make selections and we need to make deselections as well. And it's easier said than done, and I don't have an immediate answer there. But I don't want to sort of downplay this at all. I truly agree that Finland excels in R&D, and of course we hope that the private sector is now investing in R&D, both domestic and international investment in R&D, because obviously for the ambitious 4% R&D target to be reached by 2030 requires twice as large investments for the private sector as the government is doing actually for its part. But I think then other areas where Finland is clearly excelling, I think in many ways is clearly, well, first of all, the energy system. As I said, we are a country which can build and provide a lot of emission-free new electricity generation. We have a stable and steady, strong grid. But it's very much a sort of a chicken and egg question as well. For us to increase the production investments or the grid investments, there has to be, industries that commit to use the electricity. And obviously, that's sort of a chicken and egg balance. And of course, we are now hopeful that the investments actually on the user side are now materializing in metals or data centers or hydrogen or many other areas. And maybe the third area where Finland is relevant and interesting and appealing is our natural resources. I mean, we are still a country with sustainably used resources, both in the renewables and non-renewables. Talking about forest sector or our mining and metals industry. So again, I think those are elements that are highly relevant. They are now very much also discussed in the European policy making sure that we are sufficiently dependent not only on imported materials and resources. So that puts Finland in spotlight as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I was going to ask this question later, but you just queued it up so extremely well because, you mentioned the inaugural FDI Forum. We launched our FDI vision where we talked about the importance of selecting strategic clusters that we focused on. And, you just mentioned also feet on the ground. That mindset is one thing, but action is another. So one of the things we strive to do is track progress on issues we've raised. And 2 years ago, Kasper Hurler, who's from Borenius, who's the chair of our environmental permitting group, stood on this stage and talked about environmental permitting recommendations. And it's been identified as one of the biggest bottlenecks and opportunities for attracting international investments to Finland. And the government program now includes recommendations on how the process can be enhanced. Can you tell us what's been done to enhance and speed up the permitting processes? And what can companies currently considering investing in Finland expect to happen? Petri, yes, for you. Yeah.
Permitting. Well, I think permitting process in Finland works better than the public image considers. And I'm talking about the permitting agencies themselves. I would claim that the Finnish permitting, when it comes down to environmental, chemical, water permits, the process is open, transparent, discussive, digital. So in that sense, I think it's at least, it compares favorably to, I would claim, many European alternatives. So we're not all that bad there. And down the government.
But I want us to be the best.
Yeah, sure. And that's what I'm saying. This is this situation where we are now. And now the good government actually is making a lot of new steps to even improve that permitting process. So there's going to be now a single agency starting with the 1st of January 2026, which is now providing a single permitting one-stop window operations for the main industrial permits that are needed and granted by the state level. So chemical, water, environmental permits. And so that's number one.
I'm going to stop you there because I think that deserves a round of applause. That's well done.
But so in that sense, I think things do improve. It's going to be digital and all that. And clearly, of course, having a single sort of a permitting process truly enables that. But the true, I think, Achilles' heels are not in the actual permit process itself. It's basically in our legislation and the appeals process that follow. I mean, I would still claim that there's expertise on the permitting agency side already today, and hopefully even getting better as we go along. Secondly, the companies that are now preparing the investment obviously have their own technological expertise. So in that sense, I think the permits that are granted are carefully considered and enabling, assuming that those conditions that are defined in the permits are maintained. But this granted permit can then be appealed and questioned, as we all know, and it's part of our obviously system. But as the environmental legislation is now strongly emphasizing the precautionary principle itself, that sort of opens up a very long and easily even a never-ending sort of a loop of questioning the permit itself. And that's a very sort of a difficult phase for anyone to sort of estimate how long will this sort of a questioning process then last. And I'm afraid there is not going to be a sort of a miracle improvement for that part of the process itself. Thanks.
Thank you. I think one of the important things to underline is that business feels a sense of urgency around this. We can't make decisions. It's 5 to 7 years for investments to come to fruition. We can't make decisions if things aren't moving quickly. Ted, you look like you have something you want to add here.
Yeah, I think there's a bit of a hesitancy in a lot of fields, and I understand what Petri brought up about the chicken and egg, for instance, on the grid capacity, whereas we still have data centers already coming to Finland. We have green steel projects. We have a lot of energy-intensive investments looking if they're coming to Finland or going somewhere else. And then we have to make a choice if we're hungry enough to grow, or if we're a bit too fearful to grow, because we haven't grown a lot in Finland for the last over a decade. And we're kind of like used to not growing and wanting to get a spreadsheet showcasing it too clearly, like this is going to happen before we get something from the government or from the cities or some other place. And we need to change that to a viewpoint where the growth is kind of the overlaying thing. And then, for instance, just talent. We had net migration 15K on average in the 2010s. A couple of years ago, when we had the working groups putting up numerical goals for work-related migration, 40K was considered silly. Like, people were like, Finland is never going to get there. And not counting the Ukrainian refugees, we got up to 38K last year. So 60K is not that far away. We can even get further beyond that in a longer time. But then we have to make a decision that we want to grow, and that's going to require some investments first. And we have to take a long-term view there.
I think also part of that long-term view is those collaborative efforts that both Johanna and Teppo mentioned. Johanna, could you go into a little bit more concrete detail? What does that mean? You've talked before about collaborative governance in order to attract sustainable investments. Could you open that up for us, please?
Yeah, I was thinking that this really has a connection to the permitting process and getting out of that appeal processes afterwards and court cases, because there are different kinds of ways we can solve problems on the local level, and this collaboration where you would need to have this discussion with the stakeholders, which would be an actual negotiation, which the aim is an agreement and not a victory for one part, is a way, I think, to avoid the situation where you have 10 years of court cases afterwards. But it means that you have to take another kind of attitude towards those stakeholders. So you're not just going there and have a hearing and then say that you have considered it, but actually going to a process. And we have these organizations forming. There are already some companies who do this in Finland, that they organize this mediation to different groups. And I think that spreading out this information, that this kind of work can be done. There are examples. This has been developed actually in US, in Oregon, and also in Harvard University is teaching it. So it has international examples, and I think that this kind of methods we need to speed up the processes in green transition.
Thank you. Petri, you had your hand up.
Yeah, maybe one area which I think would be truly needed in sort of a smoothening the permitting space, I think, is very much if we were able to allow a sort of ecological compensation. So meaning that if and when certain emissions would take place, those would be compensated actually with a factor somewhere else. And today this is not at all made possible in our legislation, which is very rigid. It has to be sort of within that given location that the emissions are controlled, but that's very difficult. Technologically, it's very difficult, obviously from the business perspective, to be 100% emission free. But if you would then be able to compensate those emissions with a hefty margin somewhere else, I think the society would win. And enabling this, I think, would be my simple wish.
Thank you very much. I think I see a lot of nodding heads. I'm going to ask one more question and then open up to the audience for Q&A. So start thinking about what you would want to ask this panel. I love, Johanna, what you said about the aim is an agreement, not victory. I think also when it comes to FDI, we're looking at progress, not perfection. So progress is what we're aiming towards. Hold on just a moment. I had the question I had saved, which I have now lost. I have too many of these. That's quite all right. I take notes when I talk also for. Well, one of the questions I know I wanted to ask was about financing. We mentioned in the previous model that, in the previous panel, that the private sector isn't as leveraged as the public sector is, and that there are opportunities, in family-owned businesses, in Finland's pension funds, in other financial instruments that could be contributing towards our FDI efforts. How do we encourage these different privately held organizations to contribute to the FDI effort? Teppo, you were talking about ecosystem building. Is this part of your ecosystem?
Absolutely is, and I would sort of add that there's a possibility to combine different sort of funding sources. So take an example of the chips thing. So what we were able to do was to get 20 million of EU funding for our chips pilot line in Tampere, which added to 20 million government funding. But there's also a number of private companies who want to see what's their role in this future of investments in the chips industry. And I think that combining these things, combining smartly what is the public funding available. Now I'm sitting at the board of Business Finland. We do a lot of that, thinking about how to combine the public funding with the private funding. And I think that if you have this idea of, let's say, 50-50 funding of different initiatives, it encourages companies to actually come and invest in R&D and get the support from the state. So I think that's one of the things that we could see happening. But of course, if you look at the whole foreign FDI approach, then there needs to be a business case. So I'm talking to a number of companies investing in our region, and it's always a question about the business case. How can you build the business case to be solid? And the solid business case, to me, is based upon those strengths and competencies. And I'd like to go back to Petri's point earlier about need to focus on certain things. I think that Petri's ministry is doing right now good things about really focusing, which means that you have to sort of something is left out. You cannot fund everything. You cannot go for everything. You have to be looking at what are areas where we are good at. And I would like to point out one thing which hasn't come up in the discussion yet. And if you look at the potential opportunity we have right now is around the global situation, our NATO membership, and that it goes to the defense, but more broadly, the whole dual-use technology. We have a lot of technology companies who can benefit from our relations right now in the US especially, but with other NATO countries as well. And that brings us opportunities both ways. So both sort of export opportunities, but also FDI opportunities. And I think that is unique right now, which we should capitalize on.
Thank you. And having run our Defense Industry Dialogue program for several years and seeing the uptake in dual-use companies participating in it, I can only undersign that. Any questions from the audience? Right there, Ida Schaumann from Amazon Web Services, who's also the chair of our digitalization working group and who serves on the board.
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Alexander, for the intro. I have a question that actually goes to the digitalization working group and something that concerns our members. Outside of Finland and the EU, there is work being done on something called the Economic Security Package, which goes into FDI and especially export controls on one side and also foreign investment screening on the other side. Now, there's a revision going on right now of the investment screening structure, looking at increasing the scope, so including more technologies. And many of these technologies are the areas that we were mentioning today where Finland is expected to excel. Our concern here is that it would be overly broad and thus add a very long process to any kind of FDI into quantum AI, any big technology sectors. So my question to you is this something you're aware of, first of all, maybe? And if you are, what are your views on how Finland should be acting in this matter? Because it feels like it's very crucial to our future and our success. Thanks.
Who would like to take a stab at quite a big question?
Looking at me.
You reached for the mic, so we just continued looking at you.
Well, thanks for the good question. Well, I think Finland and Europe needs to be aware. I mean, all investments are not welcome, and there are certain powers in the world that are using commercial actors to serve their political needs, and I think we should not let that happen, at least not too easily. So first of all, at least today's present situation in Europe and in Finland in particular is that we have very little means to obstruct foreign investments that somehow are questionable It's only if those questionable investments are to do with defense industries, critical infrastructure, and that's all. I mean, if they want to buy a Finnish quantum computing company, I mean, it's difficult to sort of have a legal means to stop that, or any certain thriving technology companies as such. So I think there's a weakness. I think in the European or the European or Finnish system, if we are concerned that our sort of technologies would be too easily taken into not so friendly hands. But again, how to sort of then extend this mechanism, which has to be based on legal systems in Europe and in Finland, is a lot easier said than done. And I think it's very difficult to come up with sensible legislation that would balance those. And I do see your concerns as well, that our Western allies are important partners, and being able to sort of make sure that, for example, the cross-Atlantic sort of synergies are utilized to the best at the business level, even though the political discussion sometimes a bit off scale. I think is something that at least the Finnish perspective is clearly understood. That there are concerns, but we should not exaggerate those. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? Go right ahead.
Ben Gladnikoff from Look Closer, country representative. I want to build on something that's come up in the country manager network. One of the strengths of Finland is what we can call a quiet competence. And that's a great strength. However, it also comes with some drawbacks in the quiet part. One problem with attracting both talent and investment to Finland is the lack of a international public image. Most countries haven't, or a lot of people have never even heard of Finland. And an example that I like to bring up is that a large part of the world's population still thinks Nokia is Japanese. Now, my question is, what concrete acts are being taken now, and what can be taken by both the public and the private sector to increase and build Finland's country branding?
It's one of my favorite topics. Teppo.
At least I know that we have been doing both locally and together with the ministry campaigns about working in Finland or working in Tampere. Latest is the campaign we pulled together with the chamber, number of companies of using social media. So now there's social media clips going on about people who have been coming to Tampere to work for, and they are telling in the social media about what sort of good stories they have to tell, because we believe that social media is probably one of the best means now to attract and capture people. But it's a really good question, because there's a lot to do. I fully agree that we are a small country in a small, distant part of the world, and nobody knows about us. And that's why I think we should do what we can collaboratively to talk the Finnish talk. But I think that we have been progressing lately quite nicely on that, but we need to figure out new ways of doing that.
I was going to say, I mean, one thing that concerns me and perhaps several others in this room is that the government recently cut Visit Finland's funding by 50%, which is an important part of our soft power. It's that international recognition and brand building, because we do need tourists to come and see and talk about how amazing we are. Sorry, Ted, go right ahead.
Partially, I think cities just need to step up a bit more even. Tampere has been doing a very good job. We need to have the bigger cities in Finland taking a bit bigger role in this, and just having more personnel doing the work that's branding for local projects and marketing the places to get more investments to Finland, but also showcasing how talent has it here, because people want to come to Finland still to work. There's certain damage control situations ongoing in Finland related to these matters. But in the big picture, like since 2015 till 2021, people from outside of the EU countries, the percentage of them being part of the labor market has been increasing steadily. And you can see that companies operating in Finland, as Elisa mentioned before, has been like having a bigger personnel that are non-Finns. And this is very one good way to kind of like showcase an easy step to come to Finland is just showcasing how the labor market works. We have a low hierarchy in workplaces. You can get your voices heard there, and this is something I actually believe that we should do a lot more.
Other questions right over here.
Hello, my name is Mia-Petra Kumpula-Natri. I'm now back in Finnish Parliament after 10 years in the European Parliament. So may I ask now the question of the Finnish panel. When I was 10 years in Brussels mostly and working with the many companies in here and be lobbied by, and often I saw the business card with the marking EMEA, EMEA region. So then I just noticed that Europe drops as an EU, and then now we talk about Finland. And when I'm back in Finland, I don't even hear EU mentioned a lot. So, and now we talk about the cities should do more. Do you see the panel Finland as the most attractive part inside the European Union, taking the benefits of the Union, being better positioned together in the globalization and situation? And it's easy to say here with the very strong transatlantic visions.
Ted, go right ahead.
Blunt answer, I think we can do a lot better, but also we've been doing quite okay. Like the city area of Espoo, for instance, the Otaniemi region, IQM, quantum mechanics, chips in Tampere region. The new technologies are things where Finland can actually benefit much more from EU funding. We're doing a better job there also. And yeah, EU is kind of like falling behind, but it doesn't mean that Finland has to fall behind. We need such a small portion of all of the growth in the world to kind of like do well. And foreign direct investment is coming to Finland. So just doing better there. And not kind of like cutting off the talent is one of the key parts.
I think that we have been and will be very active in EU and promoting the EU topic. And one of the things that Jana and I actually share, we are both in the semi-finals of European Innovation Capital Award. So the 6 cities, 2 of them Finland. So that tells that we have sort of a good reputation within the EU. We do work in a number of projects on EU, latest ones around AI, around Cityverse, so topics which are really, really key to it. And I think that the connotation of EU follows that quite naturally. But of course, you know, being Europe is something which probably we should be promoting even more.
Johanna, do you have anything to add? No. Okay. Other questions? Over there, Egbert, go right ahead.
Hi, Egbert Schramm, Culture Factor Group. One question on educational policy. So as a cultural advisory, we sometimes collaborate with governments. One of the projects was with the Philippines about making that a more entrepreneurial country. Now, today we heard a lot about growth mindset and a lot about taking a bit more ownership. A lot of customers struggle with that concept, leaders taking ownership. To which extent do you feel that Finnish education is promoting entrepreneurship sufficiently?
Spicy one, Teppo.
Yesterday, I was part of the group that was talking about the entrepreneurship in teaching in schools in Tampere. So it's coming up, it's gearing up. We have had those sort of entrepreneur villages for kids in the 9th grade and trying to promote the idea. But I think that the best would be that we could actually showcase even more the success stories of the startups, because that would be the one that would really encourage the entrepreneurship on the youth. So try to do that as much as we can. And I think that we, like Espoo, is doing a lot of good work around the startups and embracing that, and we just need to do more and tell the story more. And of course, universities need to be part of that. And that's what we've been talking with the local university, how to combine forces in the startup scene.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more question. Right over there in the back. Is that Miljo back there? Yes, it is.
So we have been talking a lot about emerging tech such as AI, quantum, many technology areas in which Finland is very capable of.
But these companies do not only need direct investments, they also need interest from the larger corporations, from the wider industry. As we have heard, many corporations are interested in R&D, but they don't have capabilities, know-how. And that's crucial to actually developing these technologies to get the actual applications that can benefit the industry. What should we do? How do we speed up the application development? How do we get everyone involved? Not just the startups and the ecosystem, but the wider industry.
So how do we get everyone involved in these efforts? Go ahead.
Well, I can take one view to that, which is that we are trying to now make everything possible to encourage the cooperation between companies on these development efforts. So the big ones, the medium-sized ones, the small ones should all come together around some topics and themes, because I think that if you are a startup, you want to be successful, you cannot do it without having big partners where you can sort of start working on. And I think that the only way is to encourage that collaboration together with the academia, universities, and we're just trying to, facilitate that.
Perfect. Go ahead, Petri.
At least Business Finland's funding for large companies is conditional on engaging small companies and universities. So in that sense, it is a strong driver for the large companies to get the smaller ones on board. And I think that's one way to facilitate the commercialization and innovation part of things. But one has to say that, and it's unfortunately that, the innovation bit is not very much growing when it comes down to the stated funds as well. We're investing a lot on the basic R&D, but the following phases, innovation and commercialization, are actually not at all seeing similar sort of increases in supports than the R&D itself, as we all know. Thanks.
To round out, in that case, building on that, to round out the discussion, what are the things after we end this stream, this program today, what are the things that you want the people in this room to be talking about? What is the thing that you think should be our conversation around our lunch tables, our, cocktail mingles? Go for it. All right, Ted, go for it.
So the damage controlling part related to talent, the government is probably going to go for the so-called retaining strategy, and we'll put together a program related to that. What's important there is to kind of make it real. And if and when we want to have a higher net migration target, we need a lot more housing, especially to the bigger city areas, where the government has to put the pressure on the cities to do more there in both development and helping with the planning stages. And also the other parts are could we, for instance, have a language voucher for Finnish and Swedish so that the recruitment threshold would be smaller, and then people could learn Finnish and Swedish while working already at a company. And putting together targets like this to one strategy would be one way of making Finland even a better place for talent.
Thank you. Teppo.
I would say that the topic we need to be putting in the question on the table is optimism. So there's a lot of this boring talk, and I understand the government, they need to do it because they need to get through their decisions, but the talk is so negative about the future outlook, and actually it is very positive, as we heard today. So bring that optimism up, bring those good things up, and start talking about that. That is how we encourage things to go forward. And we have a saying, what we use, and we say that to boldly go where no one has gone before. That's the way that we want to do things. So do it, be optimistic, and believe that things will happen.
Thank you.
This is a very good place to continue, because I think we need the common vision, which is optimistic, and we have, like we heard, we have reasons to be optimistic and reasons to have an optimistic vision. What I think that hasn't come up yet with the skills issue is that we should be able to imagine a world to be different and things to be different. And that's something that we should be talking about, that what is the sustainable world that this transition is taking us, and what is there that isn't here yet. I heard a part of this in the earlier discussion that that we don't know yet what the jobs will be, what are the things that we can actually do in the future, and this is what we should be concentrating on, imagining and thinking differently.
I love that. Thank you. Petri.
Let's be rationally optimistic and let's be patient.
Feel free to quote him on that.
Let's be patient as well. I think we easily overestimate the speed of change in the short term, but we similarly underestimate the speed of change in the longer term. So I think the change will happen, but it will take much longer than our sort of a not rationally optimistic first insights have assumed. Thank you.
Well, we'll be here to support that progress and that change. A warm thank you to our speakers, our panelists, and especially a warm thank you to FDI Forum partners for 2024, Borenius, Bristol Myers Squibb, Business Tampere, Enter Espoo, and Suomen Ekonomit. You are a driving force behind why I am optimistic about our future. And the best thing we can do for Finland is to shine our light, our attention, our words, our optimism, and our impact on FDI, on foreign direct investment. We need to seize the potential of FDI. We need to make it an agenda item in our conversations. We need to set bold goals. We need to have a vision and a strategy that we can follow. And if you're looking for the right partners to do that with, well, we're all together here today. We're in this room. We're streaming from offices and from home. And so thank you all for joining us here today. We've got a lot of work to do. So let's go ahead and do it. Thank you.